Nazi tattoos. They decorate their clothing with swastikas and other Nazi symbols. They give Nazi greetings, and they're open about it in the social media. There are particularly many of them in the national battalions such as Aidar, the Right Sector, and the Azov Battalion. And that would be one thing, but they're also acting like Nazis, and they're killing like them. And they're not just killing Russian or prisoner soldiers, in which they torture and gloat about it on the social media, but they kill their own. Your neo-Nazis and radicals have shown unrivaled cruelty against the civilians, which they use as human shields, and position heavy artillery next to residential buildings and multiple rocket launchers as well. Today we've heard once again a huge amount of lies about Russian soldiers and military. We have hundreds, if not thousands, of video testimonials of people who are ready to provide testimony about the cruelty of Ukrainian nationals. I'll just read some of them here. These are cruel histories, but you need to hear them. Natalia Kudinova says, the mayor of the town was one of the first to run away. Afterwards, the Ukrainian authorities lied that Russia was not letting people through humanitarian corridors. The National Battalion Azov, under threat of death, kept women and children in basements, and it robbed civilians at checkpoints. A grandmother said that the Azov Battalion did not allow her to leave basements. Anyone trying to leave was shot. At the Azov checkpoint, women and girls were stripped naked and had their jewelry and money taken away, including their Valentina Nikolaevna Borisenko says how Ukrainian soldiers kicked out women with 2 children from a private home and then used it to lob mortar rounds. And that woman had 2 children. They were kicked out by soldiers with blue armbands. Those are Ukrainian insignias of the Ukrainian army. Marina Vasilyevna testified that she was tortured in a basement by Ukrainian security services. They tied me to a sewer pipe when I found out I was Russian. They beat me, used electric current, raped me, and they threatened to rape my young daughter. Shapovalova Olga Georgievna. We left Mariupol from Mangusha on the 25th of March. The firing positions of the Ukrainian army were positioned between residential homes and in the courtyard of a school. They used civilians as cover. In the neighborhood around the drama theater, a Ukrainian tank drove around, firing indiscriminately, including targeting residential buildings. On the territory of the 69th, 68th, and the 5th school, tanks were stationed. I saw this with my own eyes. Madam Suportkina Olga Sergeyevna, this is her testimony. In school number 15 of Mariupol, starting from 25th of February, the Ukrainian armed forces took up positions and left on the 7th of March. They directed fire from there. Our building was badly damaged from the shelling. On the 8th and 9th of March, there was intense shelling, intentionally targeting residential homes. Ukrainian soldiers were asked why they're doing it. They replied that until they destroy the entire Russian spirit in whole, they will remain there. They started looting immediately. They plundered all the shops. And it was the forces of the Donetsk People's Republic that helped evacuate us and drove us to Mangusha. There are many other heart-rending stories. There are Russians and Ukrainians tortured to death with swastikas burned into their chests. There are looters and criminals who you distributed weapons to. There are civilians and foreigners who are held hostages, and in spite of all factual evidence and common sense, you're trying to lay the blame for their death on the Russian military. This is absolutely unacceptable. The fact that even consider that Russian military would be capable of this. And now we're seeing blatant criminally staged events with the Ukrainian civilians who were killed by their own radicals in the best traditions of Goebbels to accuse the Russian army. those killed in the areas from which the Russian forces withdrew after encouraging peace negotiations in Istanbul. So now it turns out that we shouldn't have withdrawn. I'm talking about Bucha first and foremost. I understand that you you saw corpses and heard testimonials, but you only saw what they showed you. You couldn't ignore the flagrant inconsistencies in the version of events which are being promoted by Ukrainian and Western media. The fact that the corpses were not there right after the withdrawal of the Russian forces, which is confirmed by several videos, and the fact that there are recordings where Ukrainian radicals urged shooting at those with white armbands, in other words, against civilians. If you saw the video very carefully that was shown today, you'll see that those people who are on the ground have white armbands. These are civilians. And the fact that the corpses on the video in no way resemble those that could have been lying on the street for 3 or 4 days. And based on the sensational and completely scientifically absurd information of the New York Times, they were there since the 20th of March. So the only ones who could fall for this fake are absolute dilettantes or our Western partners who don't want to hear anything and have been calling black white and vice versa for a long time now. Unfortunately, these countries don't give a hoot about Ukraine itself. It's simply a pawn in the geopolitical game against Russia, which they will sacrifice easily. But in the meantime, they will try to prolong the conflict by delivering as much weapons as possible and ammunition. But the most important thing is that how have we sunk to such depths of cruelty that nationalists are displaying, for example, those from the Azov Battalion? And you, I'm addressing the Ukrainian president, in your interview with the Americans media, you coyly, bashfully state that they are what they are. I really hope that you will reflect on this and hope that you will find a solution to the situation, because it depends only on you. Because we came to you, to Ukraine, not to conquer lands. We came to bring the long-awaited peace to the blood-soaked land of Donbass. Not a truce, but a true, lasting peace. And for this, we need to root out the cruelty which I mentioned. We need to cut out the malignant Nazi tumor that is consuming Ukraine and would in time begin to consume Russia. And we will achieve that goal. I hope sooner rather than later, because there is no other outcome. We are not shooting against civilian targets in order to save as many civilians as possible. This is precisely why we're not advancing as fast as many expected. We're not acting like Americans and their allies in Iraq and Syria. We're razing entire cities to the ground. They had no pity for them, but we felt great pity because these are people who are close to us. But radicals have nothing to lose. They couldn't care less about civilians. They're ready to take to the grave with them the entire population of the Ukraine, as was clearly demonstrated by the provocation in Bucha. Don't allow the West to achieve its goals, Vladimir Alexandrovich. Make the right decisions that are needed for your country, because the West is ready to fight in the Ukraine until the last Ukrainian. Make that decision now, because the real situation on the front. Later, it might be too late soon. Thank you very much for your attention.